get into it a little bit. I've done a couple of classes down in the city. Yeah. Do you like it?
I do. I ride all summer and do a little running. I try to, but I can't run at all. But mainly, why not? Frustrating with it. Oh, just like the pain. So I started running more.
Yeah. Cool for you.
But then once it was everything indoors.
Hey, newbie, how you know?
I spoke with one of the No, I know.
It's that right. Yeah, I
The good thing with the rowing is once I move the whole thing indoors to get on the bike.
Yeah.
One day is the rower, one day is the body.
So I'm going to email you this workout. I'm going to send you things. So you're my target dude.
Okay, good.
I know. You're going to get into it. You're going to get into it.
All right, good. I like it. I can have it right now. You're going to get famous. I'll feed him. So what happened to your fish?
Going into
Why don't we go to very good.
Thursday, one more week.
I love those Thursdays. Yes, I do. Because they're trying to kill me the last Thursday that I'm working. I know, that's great.
So I'm sending you. Are you on my? I'll tell you in a second. So this is this string that you can use on your iPhone and your Facebook. It takes about an hour. You try it out. All you need is a pair of 10 once you got it good, then you're with the PDF. All right, I'll do it. Send it to me. You can have dumbbells, rub right on the house. Set up the entire cul-de-sac, which runs strengthening programs to their young athlete program down online twice a month. I'll take it off in a second.
Still warming up?
Yeah, I think my run this morning. You're on my show. I was okay, great. And then you'll get
All right, I think we're going to start. We're going to trickle in as they always do. So I'd like to introduce Dr. Jordan Metzel. He's a sports medicine doctor, also a pediatrician, right? I think he trained at Boston Children's. He did a sports medicine fellowship there. He is who you'd like to send all your patients who have sports injuries. I met him while I was in residency at Mount Sinai, and he changed how I looked at injuries and treat them. And basically, you know, as we know, kids are not little adults. They have different injuries. And no offense to the orthopedists, around here, but they often see kids as little adults and miss things. So,
I agree with that.
huge. Right. So, this is Russell, and we have everybody. Thank you so much. So he practices at Hospital of Special Surgery.
Yeah.
And is also in Greenwich, Connecticut as well.
Old Greenwich. So Old Greenwich is the, it's a little chilly. I got to say, hello, everybody. Good to see you. And thanks for having me up. I went out, so I came up last night. I didn't realize you guys are so close. So in the summer, we ride triathlon training. We ride from Manhattan to the top of Bear Mountain and sometimes over Bear Mountain Bridge and back is like our longer days. And it's like right here. It's like pretty close. So I was impressed. I might as well just keep going. I'll be like, next time I'll ride the lecture. I'll be fine. But it's good to come up and see Mark. It's you know, I met Mark 15 years ago probably 15 years ago. He was chief resident, and one of the first places I went up to talk when I was just had got to New York. I'd done all my training and a lot about sports injury, and recognized that you know, kids sports injury was a whole different thing. At that point, I had great ideas, and I had I think good training from Boston, and nobody had any idea what I did. And my first week in practice, I had one patient, and I'm like, well, this is going to be a quick time in New York. And Mark was one of the first people I met, and he's so helpful to me along the way when he was chief resident, and as I've kind of grown and done different things, as I'll talk about in a second. It's so nice to reconnect, and the nice of which is that I still see his mom for injections in her knee for this synthetic lubricant for arthritis, which has been a godsend to my adult patients with arthritis. I see adults too, and she's doing terrific. So the apple does not fall far from the tree, and it's a pleasure to be up here. So I'm going to talk to you about sports and kids. Let me say that across the spectrum of kind of what I've been doing over years and what people in the sports medicine section have been doing, you know, my dad is a pediatrician. I initially did residency in pediatrics, though I haven't practiced pediatrics at all since then. But as I've gone to do sports medicine and mostly orthopedic issues in athletes and in adolescent athletes, you know, my main focus and idea is that I think that the data on kids in sports and people in sports in general is that kids in sports seasons are in school. They have less time. They do better in school academically. If they're active and involved, they have kind of better self-esteem, better health markers across the spectrum of childhood, adolescence, young adulthood, etc. They need to live longer, healthier, happier lives. And, you know, in a field such as pediatrics, where the entire focus from literally the first day somebody is born is how do I prevent the bad stuff? How do I prevent this kid from getting hepatitis when they're 37 years old, which is you start thinking about that on day one of their life. Across the spectrum of condition, there is no better medicine that has basically no side effects, works for every single patient that takes it, young or old, or poor, in any country around the world, than activity and exercise. It works for every single person that takes it. So anybody in here goes out for a walk every morning, you'll reap the benefits. If you go for a jog, you'll get more benefits. Or if you get your heart rate up higher, you'll get more benefits. And your pediatric and adolescent patients the same way. So a huge focus and interest of mine is getting people off their butts and going every single day. And I think that in the child health world, that starts with you. And so I was already talking this morning in this corner about recruiting a boot camp, the Poughkeepsie version of the boot camp class I've been running, and I think you guys will be hearing more about that. But I think there's so much of a great opportunity to start thinking about what health and prevention means outside the kind of walls of the office. So that's how we'll kind of get started. Now, a couple comments on this. I'll have some cards at the end, but I have a website that has a registration page. I try and do like a sports medicine newsletter a few times a year. I also have a link to sign up to an ongoing strength training classes, which I teach. So every 2 weeks, I teach these free strength training classes in Manhattan. We started with about 20 people. We're now up to about, I did one on Sunday. We had 175 people show up at 10:30 in the morning doing some hill running and strength training. It's a lot of fun. They're always free. And and it's great. So all ages. I have an 82-year-old lady and a 10-year-old kid that came. This is kind of the age spectrum, as I'll talk about. Also do a lot of stuff on Twitter, and if there's any tweeters in here, but big on Twitter in terms of kind of doing a lot of this kind of social media around health and fitness and prevention and wellness. I think it's important that we're involved in that. So we're going to begin here, guys, by looking at this discussion. I'm going to play you a video. Is there a little more audio on this? I know it's going to be, is that this big speaker here? That thing is going to be able to blast some tunes here. Oops. I feel like this thing can generate some.
Playing that?
Yes, it's not loud enough. It's not loud enough. Is that
Yeah.
Is that it? All right, we'll give this a try. If you can't hear, we're going to switch speakers because I want you guys to see this. All right, so this kind of starts to what I've kind of discussed here so far.
I believe would make time machines. Make medicine for the sick. I invent something new. Or $9 did. I could have an extra 5 years to live. You said 5, right? 5 years. A long time. I would try to fix everything I did bad. I would bring my uncle back because I miss him very much. I would get more hamsters. I would probably want to go looking for dark matter. I think I'd go looking for aliens. If I could live an extra 5 years, I was thinking about making like a helicopter, like a wooden helicopter. I don't have any wood. I'd probably teach my sister not to hit tuna. I would try to invent a machine that lets you learn at light speed. And I have 5 more extra years to live. I would be the boss of all the children. I think to do me to control us. I don't really know. I think I'd do anything. Why are you asking me that?
Sorry to take basically hitting you guys below the belt, especially in this room that's showing you some adorable, awesome, kind of 10-year-old kids doing all their sports and they're just bright kids, bright, good answer to the questions, and kind of looking at this issue of health and activity and the implications of unhealth and inactivity. And as I kind of said at the onset, a big part of what I've kind of am doing and have been working on, in addition, very much, obviously during the day, I take care of sport injuries and orthopedic injuries. But in a kind of broader sense, I'm really looking at ways to get people going and to get healthcare professionals to start thinking about getting people going. Because to me, there's the silo of fitness, which is kind of the gym fitness world, and a silo of medicine. These two silos, which could have so much to gain from interacting with each other, are two totally independent silos. And I think that's to the detriment of both groups. And so I think there's a lot we can do to step into that space and to get patients going because I think the issue for us is that that we spend most of our resources and most of our money, upwards of almost $3 trillion now a year, working on taking care of disease after it happens. And of any specialty, pediatrics is the best. It's going to think about prevention, but even so, from Hippocrates on down, the focus is much more on taking care of the problem after it happens. And I like this analogy of kind of a dam. And the left-hand side of the dam is the water that's going to go through the dam, and on the right-hand side of the water is the water that's already gone through the dam. And the vast majority of medical resources, medical money is really spent here, though Pediatrics does a little bit up here, and other fields do a little bit up here, but kind of we do this. And I like this quote at the bottom, as you can from 1873, those who think they have not the time for bodily exercise will sooner or later have to find the time for illness. And I think those patterns start young. And I think those patterns are becoming increasingly difficult as the sport world really starts to restrict to the haves and the have-nots, to super elite travel kids and the have-nots. There's a lot of barriers that kind of start to stand in the way of people that just want to get out and get their people moving around. And I think that's where there's such a big role for health professionals to try and figure out, try and figure out solutions to this issue, because there's a lot I think we can do there. So I'm just going to spend a couple minutes before we jump into sport injury talking a little bit about this concept of exercise as medicine. I'm involved in this. My book I did, this past one, was called The Exercise Cure, which kind of looks at the scientific basis for exercise as medicine across the spectrum of disease, everything from the brain to arthritis to, starting in the brain, depression, anxiety, attention deficit. We have this kind of society where people just want the medicine quickly, and they want it a little bit for their kids. They want it a lot bit for themselves. Just give me a pill to lower my blood pressure. Give me a pill to lower my cholesterol. So this concept of medicine of exercise, looking at this. And so, I started that by thinking about, what's the definition of medicine? So a substance or preparation used in treating disease, well, for sure exercise does that. Something that affects well-being, for sure exercise does that. The science and art of dealing with the maintenance, health, prevention of alleviation or cure of disease, for sure exercise does. So I think by all metrics, as I mentioned, this is the most effective, powerful, cheap medicine we have. So how do we get people to do that? And I think, again, our system is set up that when people say, are you exercising half hour a day? Great. All right. Even in adults or in kids somewhat, are you being active? Like, what are you doing? But we don't have a great way to then start thinking about how much can you? I did a really interesting interview last night with Wired Magazine, looking at kind of talking about the future of fitness tracking apps and apps to encourage activity. And these are great, and I have a lot of my patients using, everything from the new fit apps on the smartphones. There's a great running program that came out of England called Zombie Chaser, where there's those little kind of zombies, and if you run like 3K, they tuck in your ear on your iPhone, like the zombie's coming to get you. Keep running, run away from the zombie. I mean, it's like great stuff. It's really fun. There's different ways to start incentivizing people to go. I mean, I think particularly in the pediatric and adolescent world, there's a lot of ways to start thinking about, I don't want to get chased down by the zombie. That would resonate with somebody, I think. And if you're thinking about that, I see Mark, so how do I get the zombie chaser? So if you look at the last email I sent you, at the bottom there's a link to different running apps in the New York Times. That was their zombie chaser. Email me about the zombie chaser. But again, there's lots of ways to start thinking about that discussion, I think, which are exciting. So I think that's also important when we look at something that was published last year. So JAMA, and I don't mean to be harping on pediatricians of any, I know because I train in peds and because my dad's a pediatrician for, 30+ years of any specialty. I mean, I just think in general, pediatrics has the best focus on the right issues, which is basically getting people healthy for life. And I think I work at a place where, these people are kind of reimbursed these, not less so, but just crazy amounts for like literally sticking some piece of something in somebody's knee, which takes about 1 second of thought versus, think about how you're going to kind of get a kid through 18 years, 19 years old, which takes a ton of thought and a ton of everything. I get strongly enough, I feel like you're oriented way on that. So when you look at the Journal of American Medical Association, which is probably one of the most conservative medical journals, about a statement last year looking at basically a 30-year retrospective of healthcare in the United States, called the Anatomy of Healthcare in the United States. And not surprisingly, we've more than doubled our GDP on healthcare up to almost $3 trillion. Number two, government funding now upwards of 50% with the news in healthcare. By the way, I think is somewhat messy in a lot of ways. I think it's hopefully a little bit better for pediatrics, which I think is important. Surprisingly to me, everyone thinks, all right, well, Medicare people cost the most money. In fact, they don't. Medicare people do not cost the most money. 80+% of the medical care is under age 65, and chronic disease, particularly in the adult population, obviously, accounts for 61% of spending costs. So if people with type 2 diabetes, and I like the analogy, some of the stuff I've been working on is looking at fitness apps and fitness tracking and encouraging and incentivizing wellness and how that's being done. There's some cool things happening. So, for example, anybody have is Humana insurance up here? Anybody on Humana? Patients, some. So a couple companies now are doing a couple things. So number one, if you are on this Humana Vitality program, they have about 7 million people in their program now. You get a fit tracker as part of signing up for that program, as part of Humana. And then because they used to give and they give health discounts for joining the gym. Well, what? You can join a gym. Doesn't mean you're going to do anything when you're there or even go, which is kind of a bad incentive. So what they're doing now is they're saying, all right, listen, if you take X amount of steps per week and per month, we're going to deduct your premium this amount. And so there's this kind of linear relationship between the more you move and less you pay. So what's your name about it? So Dave down this morning in his basement on his erg machine or doing his thing this morning is going to be paying less than somebody that just kind of woke up and came over here. And that makes sense from a medical economics point of view, and it makes a lot of sense to starting to incentivize people to do the behaviors we want to do. And so we're starting to see some of that. We're starting to see some of that in companies. Bloomberg is one where they have fit trackers for their employees, and they pay less money if they move more during the week and during the month, just a little bit, but they're incentivized differently based on what they're doing. So we're really going to start to see this kind of interface of knowing they want people to move and figuring ways to get people to move as kind of an incentivized-based structure going forward, which I think is great. I mean, all that stuff is really exciting because I think we can start aligning what we want on the medical side, which is why I'm really kind of encouraging everybody to kind of help in your own way, get into this space and start thinking about it, because there's so many things you can do and some opportunities that you can kind of start grasping just with using some of these different things to get people up and get people going, as well as yourselves. Anybody use a fit tracker, the wrist at all today? Jawbone, fit, felt, anything on their phone? Anybody track those yet on that new thing on that? All right, so that may be something interesting for you. So,
don't have a sign-in for October.
yeah, you sign into, but I love the idea more of actually physically you're doing there.
Just sign and not do anything.
Yeah, that's the point. So you could, yeah.
Half the motivation is getting to the
Sure, for sure. But I like the idea. And the other piece that I'm big into is that, going is great, but I think exercise, a lot of it can be, Mark loves to go hiking, so that counts. So why should Mark be penalized because he's hiking instead of going to the gym? The answer is he shouldn't. He should be rewarded for moving instead of penalized for not going to the gym. So I like the movement-based thing a lot for that reason. So it may be an interesting thing, guys. There's a couple different things. If you have the newest iPhone download, they have the little health on there. That thing's a fitness tracker right in there. You can just activate that. You can activate it on your phone. That's really easy to do. Or if you want to get one of the newer, Jawbone has a Jawbone Up, which is their Jawbone Up 24, which is a wireless tracker. You little skinny thing on your wrist, and it'll track everything you do throughout the day. It wirelessly uploads to your phone. You'll know how many steps you take per day. You can set up. I set up my parents, so they're kind of both. I know how much they're doing every single day. Like, dude, Dad, what's the matter? Get off your ass. What are you doing? It's kind of fun. But those things are terrific. And again, I think, we're just starting to look at research on these kind of things. But I like the idea of, for at-risk kids and maybe some companies and reaching out to some of these things. There's a much less expensive Jawbone clip, which is $45 on Amazon, and to figure out how much of my patient's moving and getting kids involved. And I think we'll see much more of that, which I'm really excited about. I think it's terrific because of this part of the equation. So that's kind of the tenets on the medicine of exercise. Because I want that message to be I was for a long time talking about, I want pediatricians to be involved in the pre-participation exam. I want you to screen for ACL injuries. I want you to screen for throwing injuries. And I think this is, to me, kind of an exciting new frontier in that discussion, is I want you to think about talking about activity beyond active are you. And then the other thing I'm kind of working in that space is actually working out an actual prescription for exercise and how people kind of start thinking about prescribing exercise, implementing that, some combination of strength and cardio, et cetera, that I'll talk about in a second. All right. So this is a nice slide I took a couple years ago. I was out giving a talk at a conference in Jackson, Wyoming, and just down the road was the rodeo. Have you been to that conference out in Jackson? So, you know, right down the road from the skiing, there's that big rodeo down there. And I went down there, and I'm thinking, all right, this is Wyoming. This is like one of the states. And I'm from Missouri, so I come with no, you know, huge discrimination. But I kind of, as I've kind of morphed into a quasi-Easterner, I've kind of down there. I'm like, this is like one of the states which is like fully deciding our, you know, our electoral politics for our whole country. And I go down there, and they got a whole pen full of kids and a pen full of sheep, like together. And every time they would take a kid between the ages of like 6 and 10, they would put him on this sheep with a rope, and they'd open the gate, and this is in fact mutton busting. And the kid would hold on for dear life until for as long as he could, or she could. And I was thinking, like, I bet the AAP would not endorse this behavior in his bicycle helmet. Now, by the way, just as an aside to that, because it makes me think about this, I'm not going to talk about concussions today, though I do see some of that stuff too, obviously, and I know you guys see a lot of that stuff. I'm sorry?
Pizza would like it.
P? PETA, gotcha, okay. I was thinking of a concussions, gotcha. P wouldn't like either, gotcha. So I feel like the concussion pendulum, from not taking this injury seriously enough and not recognizing that it heals with slow kids, to this one has swung so far now that every single kid that gets hit in the head, people are freaking out on you guys. There's all this money being made on these apps and programs around, you know, everyone's freaking out about concussion. And I think I talked to a soccer organization last week, and I'm like, listen, if your kid tears ACL, it will entirely change her life forever. As I'll talk about knee injuries in a second, she has about a 60% risk of getting arthritis 15 years from now. Her entire activity profile forever can change in a split second with an ACL tear. 9% of concussions get better within a week. They're self-limited problems. Like, they're serious, and we don't want them to keep happening, but this pendulum has swung so far that you guys, are getting killed with this stuff. I just feel like people are concussion crazy. No thanks to ESPN issue. But just turn on the TV, you feel like, you know, the biggest health epidemic we have is Ebola and concussion. Those are the two things. We have like 3 cases of Ebola in the whole world here. I mean, definitely, like that one guy in New York, and the whole place, every person that comes in our hospital has a thing. I've been screened for Ebola. I'm like, get these resources in towards like what you're eating, or, you know, bicycle safety, anything. We're freaking Ebola. It's just crazy. Like, one guy gets this. Anyway, so I feel like concussion, same thing. That it's an important thing, and I'm happy, and I can answer questions about it during the Q&A. But in general, that pendulum has swung so far that it's making it, I think, tough on you. But anyway, this is one of our little mutton busters, so I think my role and your role in the treatment of sport injuries in kids. In general, kids sports. We want them to play sports. It's good for them to play sports. Everybody in this room wants their patients of all levels to play sports. So I think there's a lot of uniformity in thinking about why sports are great for kids to do. So our job is to make sure they don't do anything stupid. And that's my job as a sports medicine doctor. I have, of all age patients that come in to see me, you know, somebody wants to run a marathon. All right, well, I never run more than like 2 miles, and I have like 2 months to train for this thing. I get some of those people, and I'm like, that's a good decision. You're like mutton busting, basically. So I think a lot of that's thinking about, you know, reasonable expectations, injury patterns, and prevention, and those are some of the things that to do. And the equation has also changed as, you know, for those who've been doing this for a while, sport injuries used to be boys with basketball and football injuries. That was sports medicine. And, you know, these days in your office, it's at least as likely, if not more likely, to be a girl with a soccer injury, a soccer concussion question, or a soccer knee injury, or a fracture. And so the thinking of what sports medicine kind of has evolved into, and what what some of the roles are for doing that kind of stuff has changed quite a bit as well. Now, to me, discussion, and an important part of that discussion is to focus around some of the general changes in the youth sport world. And that includes, number one, increasing amount of competitiveness. This kind of growth of the trial and select team has been, I think, detrimental to many kids. Now, there are some kids who thrive under that kind of thing. So to be on the travel select soccer team, travel basketball team, it's been great for a small number of kids. I think for most of the kids, it discouraged them from being involved. They get discouraged. And I think part of the problem is so much of the resource of community goes towards really building these uber 2% soccer players that you kind of lose that other group who may not be as skilled or don't develop at the same rate. I like to say that, Michael Jordan was cut from his ninth grade basketball team. So people achieve athletic prowess at different ages. But I think the main point is that, though every parent thinks they're sitting on the next Derek Jeter, the odds are they're not, sorry to say, for you guys. But, the main focus is obviously getting them out. So this increasing competition has changed. This growth of travel and select teams has changed. And, that has led to, with more numbers of girls, more participants and more injuries. So I like this video as kind of part of this discussion. And I'll tell you that I would much rather have this father than another who doesn't care. This is a father who cares, but I think it sheds some light into this system of increasing competition.
This isn't just about spending money. When their kids are playing, these parents are...
It's not even big enough on that outside. Why do you have the ball? Why get down to talk to the guy? He has the ball. How could he be offside?
I was there.
You were there. This is going to be you coming up right here. Show you. Here you come, Mark.
The thing about travel team soccer is that one parent may be more obsessed than the next. It is 60 of the second half. Meet Don Powell, soccer parent and self-proclaimed sportscaster for the Jackson Jammers, another team playing at Virginia Beach.
All the way through was taken by Jeff. Changes over to a little touch pass out to Sean on the way. Short control, didn't go. So he's stolen. Out of bounds.
Don's 9-year-old son Wesley plays right wing for the Jammers, and Don videotapes every minute of every game his son plays. Not just for fun.
Well, and the question was to my ending center and coaches. I do the play-by-play. It's one of the things that the coach likes about me. It allows me to go into the huddle, into the team patch time with the kids, and we'll use the tape as a video review. Future corrections and eliminate errors.
All right. So we got to.
Actually, this
Yeah.
is a true story. This past weekend, we went to a soccer game and travel. And two fathers from the other side. The cameras are tiny now. This is the old camera. The booms are huge. So one had a pole up at least 100 feet, so he could zoom in on every part of the field.
Yeah.
And the other guy had a boom that it was just...
How old is the kid? Yeah. So, there's a whole combination of a lot of things, but I think it's mostly a comment on the culture of that's changed. And again, it's easy to say, let's make that different. It ain't going anywhere. All right. There's a lot of people are, that's the culture. People like it. People have a lot of money on it. There's a lot of reasons why this is kind of happening. But I say that your job is to A, make sure that it's the healthiest place for your patients, and B, that there's alternatives for people who aren't in that. That's a very small group of people that can do that, and the injury rate's higher, the burnout rate's higher, et cetera.
Injury and
More competitive. higher competition is higher injury rate. All right, so what do we mean by healthy sport experience? And the answer is kind of two things simultaneously. So I think mind, competition, psychological makeup, or kids having fun. I think that's the most important thing is that healthy kids, see them all day long. And so when they talk about their sport, are they having a good time? They may not be the best, they may not be the worst, but as long as they like it, that's great. It should be the most fun. And then body type, the truth of the matter is that, when I see somebody in my office who is, here's the thing we'll try. Everybody take your wrist straight out just like this. Take your thumb and push your thumb back towards your radius bone. If anybody's thumb, when you bend this way, can touch their radius, hold your arm straight up in the air. Let's see. Anybody touching all the way? So you push your thumb back. Somebody touch their thumb back there. I think you're the closest back there in the corner. Anybody touching? Let me. Oh, I think the lady back in the red are you touching back there? How about next to you? Are you touching? No? Nobody? All right, we got the closest right here. All right, hold your arm up in the air. Cheating. Okay, it's cheating. I got you. All right, so I like that. So that's our most ligamentously lax human in the room. So when we look at elite level swimmers, for example, so it's called the modified Marshall test. John Marshall was one of the first heads who had a sports medicine at HSS. He died in a plane crash in 1980 on the way to the Olympic Training Center in Lake Placid. So this modified Marshall test is a great screen. If you ever get a note from me, you'll see one of the things I say is modified Marshall test. If it's somebody with a shoulder instability, particularly said shoulder slipping. And what I'm saying when I say that is that I'm looking for how much inherent ligamentous laxity is there in their body, and this is a good screen for that. So the reason I say that, choosing the right body for the right sport, is if you look at our Olympic level swimmers, they all have Marshall grade 5. They all can catch this without a problem, which translates into very lax shoulders, which as a swimmer is a huge advantage because they can streamline and get their arm all the way straight in the pool, where the average person can't do that. So there are a lot of adaptations that are very helpful for different sports. Same thing with our ballet dancers. So if somebody's coming down to be a dancer, I see lots of dancers, and it has good natural turnout from their hip. They basically don't have to use the floor almost at all to force their turnout, versus if they don't have very good turnout in the hip, they have femoral anteroversion, their hip is rotated forward instead of back. What they do to get the proper turnout in classes, use the floor to let themselves out all the way, and they come in to see me with a lot of foot or knee pain from trying to get in that position. The point on that is that natural body types are very selected to different types of sport, any sport. And so if you look at all the soccer players look similar, all the football players look similar, by position, and there's truth to that in terms of body types. So certainly that doesn't mean that I don't have people who are not built for playing football. I mean, I for sure see that. Or people who are not built for basketball playing. I definitely have all the people not built for running marathons, but they're body types. And if you have the right body type for the right sport, you tend to have less problems in terms of, better performance and less injury because you're just built better for that sport. So I always think about that when I look at this slide of this guy who's on his third concussion at age 12 in Greenwich, who's a lacrosse player, and something about his brain and getting shaken around playing lacrosse are not fully consistent. Or this guy from the Mark Morris Dance Company who's dancing on point at close to 175 pounds, like not made to dance on point. He's just not built that way. So there's certainly body types that favor or unfavor. What time is this done, by the way, just so I know time-wise? Okay, perfect. All right. So this guy taught us that different bodies have different natural add-ins for selectivity. I think nothing is as helpful as this great video from Japan, where every year on national TV they take their sumo wrestlers and literally run them down the middle of the road on national TV. I guess there's not much going on in Japan, so this is like one of the things that happens. So this is national TV in Japan every year, and I like this video because this guy is exceptionally well built for sumo. He's not a sprinter. And so I think that's helpful because when you start thinking about your patients and what sport they're doing, and if they're coming in to see you all the time with injuries, I often will have the discussion, listen, you love dance, but you're hurt all the time in ballet. Let's think about a different kind of dance. Or let's think about you're getting hurt all the time from gymnastics. Let's think about, diving. So things that can utilize their skills, but not, because I love the work that people put into all ages. Adolescent athletes are awesome. They put in so much dedicated effort, helps them across the spectrum. I got into sports medicine because I thought the teach kids do sports were just such great people. I just loved their dedication from an early age because I could totally relate to it myself. I really felt the same and did the same and do the same. So I really got that. And so I think helping to channel that is terrific. So I think this question of sports specialization is an important one. If you one sport alone, you hurt more doing that sport. It's a good idea for very few kids. Specializing at kind of later ages, about 13, 14, I'd say minimum. And so, again, specialization is encouraged by the sports system, discouraged by the medical system. So you're kind of stuck between two opinions there. It's a difficult issue to fully quantify, but intensive training and specialization, there's a position statement on the AP on this, and I think if you have any questions, you can kind of look through that. And the comments on that, those who specialize after puberty, less risk of injury, more consistent performance record. Children should participate based on their ability and level of interest, not because their parents want them to. Recognition, identification of risk factors are essential. Body composition, weight, stature, sexual maturation, and sense of emotional stress should all be considered. I'll talk about two injuries here, particularly. I'm going to talk about ACL injuries, and I'm going to talk about throwing injuries. One, 16-year-old soccer player. She's kicking a soccer ball. She feels a pop in her knee. She comes in the office next day with a swollen knee.
Planted knee.
Planted knee. Now, I spent a lot of time over years harassing residents alike on kind of knee exam, back exam, shoulder exam. But if you want that thing, I think with the AP, it's all on Amazon under my name, but I did a thing with the AP. I think Mark has at your office still. Sports medicine in the pediatric office. It's this full kind of with a DVD or downloadable on your iPad next to it. And so it kind of goes through pretty much every single body part, what the normal exam is and what the abnormal exam is by case. So I go through like a normal knee exam, normal ankle exam. I want you guys to try and be as involved as you can in sports medicine. I think the more involved you can be, the better. And part of that is that you just get really such poor training in musculoskeletal exam skills in residency. And I've been fighting this battle for a long time, and I'll keep fighting the battle for a long time, but it's like an uphill climb. So if you get trained, you get really, really well trained in kind of intubating a 26-week-old infant and transporting that kid, which is obviously important, but when you're done, you see a lot more sprained ankles than you do 26-week-old kids. So I think this has been there's a lot of reasons why that happens, but in any case, that hopefully is a good resource, and a lot of people have used that over time. So this kid comes in with swelling in her knee. She comes in with a swollen knee, and the first thing is that ACL injuries can be very violent in their presentation. They can be just kind of surprisingly like twisted my knee. And the thing that you have to look out for is anything that swells, particularly swells quickly, is bad. If it swells quickly, it's generally either a patellar dislocation or a torn ACL. About 50% of the time, 75% of the time, it's a torn ACL. Maybe sometimes a torn peripheral meniscus, but generally if it swells quickly, it's bad. That's rule number one. And so that's the person that kind of comes in. Now, kind of going through the knee exam is kind of but the injury in the adolescent is really epidemic levels in girls particularly, and I kind of spent the first half of this more talking about I really want kids to play sports, and so now I'm going to talk about how crappy these ACL injuries, and those almost seem kind of at odds with each other. So the answer is not don't play sports, that's a double negative. The answer is don't ACL. And how are we going to do that? Strengthen the hell out of your muscles and figure out who's at risk and make sure those guys are doubly strengthening. Those are the 2 points to make. All right. So injury rate for ACLs is basically much higher than it is for boys. Can happen in any of these twisting sports, and it happens in girls when they go through puberty. So ACL rates are roughly equivalent boys to girls until age 11 or 12. And then girls start to kind of really have about a 2, 3, 4, 5 times higher rate than boys. And the reason that's happening is because as the adolescent pelvis starts to widen, Q angle, the angle between the hip, the knee, and the foot starts to widen and change, which puts much more risk of a valgus loading moment on the knee, and that is why this huge gender difference, which carries over into adulthood.
Yeah. Is there a device that one can wear to prevent this?
Strong butt muscles. And that's the answer. No device on the knee. There's a lot of device on the strength piece, and that's what I'm going to talk about. So, we're going to watch, come on in, we're going to watch college gymnasts. All right? Now, she's strong. So, strong butt muscles are not the only answer. There's no device to wear. But I want you to watch her, and I want you to watch the position her right knee lands in, all right? Because leave here saying, all right, that guy said prevent ACL injuries. I want you to understand why and what you're going to do in the office, all right? Watch your knee. Now, the valgus moment where both those knees, and if you look at ACL injuries happening in basketball or volleyball or soccer, they almost always look just like that. Non-contact, valgus moment in the knee. And you can see why girls are more likely to land that way than boys. And so, we're saying probably almost 5 times more common this an ACL tear looks like on an eye. And again, make the comment that like you're an England Patriots fan, maybe not. And Tom Brady tears his ACL, now he's back playing in the NFL. Great, he's gone, now he's back. And the answer is that 15 years down the road, he has like a supermodel wife, he's going to have an achy knee. This onset of arthritis is basically 12 to 14 years down the road. 5 to 8% of the patients have arthritic changes on their X-rays already. And basically surgical repair, whether or not they get it fixed makes no difference. It's the injury, it's not the surgery. To me, this whole focus on concussion, which is great, misses the point of this, which is, so think about that, Mark, in your travel soccer stuff, how much effort are they spending talking about prevention of these injuries? And the answer is probably not very much. And so that is part of this. And so, we see people at age 30 or 31 who tore their ACL when they were 15 or 16, and their knee looks, 20, 30 years older than they are, which can really limit activity going forward. So better to prevent than treat. So multiple factors that predispose somebody to ACL injury. Key for us is that we can really prevent this with better muscle strength. And so this is a kind of look at the multiple studies that have been done on ACL prevention. The upshot of which is that basically net these studies, ACL prevention works, that you can prevent this injury from happening in risk people. So I'm going to show this patient. Now, what I'm going to have you guys do is when a kid comes in your office for whatever, and particularly if it's someone who's going to do sport, I want you to stand her up on a chair just like this, with a box in the office. I want you to up right here, and she's going to hop down. All right, let's watch this, and now you have to tell me, high, based on what you saw on the video, high, medium, or low risk for ACL tear. Oop.
Episode you want?
I'm going to give you one more time. There's high, medium, or low. Why? Gotcha. So she drops right into that valgus moment, right? So she's a volleyball player. Valgus moment. So she is saying, all right, listen, somebody's at high risk. What answer is, A, she's not volleyball anymore, or B, she strengthened her muscles so she can control her landing a lot better, and she didn't land like that. So obviously, what? A and B? No. And I think the point is that this kid will do better across the entire spectrum of her life if she plays volleyball. She will be healthier, she will be happier, she'll have better self-esteem. So I want kids to play volleyball, and so do you. But the question is, how do we keep her from tearing her ACL? And the answer is that we keep her out of that position, which is a very doable thing. If you think about it, if stood up and sat down in the chair, what keeps you from having your knee fall in the middle or not? And the answer is your butt muscles. So if you, even with my adult patients and all my stuff on Roswell, one of the hashtags I use on Twitter a lot is hashtag strong butt, hashtag happy life. The stronger your butt, the happier your life. There's a direct correlation here. And when it comes to sports, it's a huge difference because your knee stays out of that position and it can affect everything around how that knee absorbs force when you're running, runner's knee or hiker's knee, to this injury, which is basically risking tearing your ACL. So we started on a series of plyometric jump squats. Anyone want to get a sense of how strong you are in this room? We can do that really quickly. Let's do that. All right, everybody stand up for 1 second in front of your chair. One hand straight in front of you. Now, these chairs, they roll a little bit, so you stand in front of your chair because you're going to have to sit. So, yeah, there you go. Now, the key is do not fall back. Your chair goes rolling out. I do not want to be responsible for any injuries here. But everybody stand in front of you now. Yeah, now, stick your right foot in front of you just a little teeny bit in front of your chair because otherwise you're going to sit. And you're not going to be able to sit in midair. There. So just a little bit. Now, try and slowly sit, lower yourself down into your chair. Keep it up. Now, keep it, yeah, good. Now, keeping that leg up, stand back up. All right. Good. Keep that leg up, sit right back down. All right, keep that leg up, stand right back up. So what you're doing, good, have a seat. So what you're doing is a single leg squat out of a chair, body weight strengthening. So all the stuff I'm having to do is body weight strengthening. The strongest person in this room is this person in the blue, by the way. What's your name? Diane. Diane's the strongest person in the room. So Diane, if you wanted good demo, Diane does not wiggle very much at all when she sits. She wobbles a bit, but she's pretty. Do you do a lot of squats?
Yeah, that was the answer.
All right, so Diane, if you want a role model, you shoot for Diane. Diane's the strongest person in here in terms of how she sits and how she's able to do that. Diane, by that correlate, Diane's having the happiest life of anybody in the room. I'll tell you right now. And so, but I think the point here is that you know, the stronger those muscles, and that's a very trainable thing. And so this same kid, we get her started on some strengthening, and comes back 3 months later, same thing, stand up, jump down off the box, all right? So to review, yeah. All right. Stress muscles prevent injury. Do they always prevent the injury? No. But do they make the injury less likely from happening? Absolutely. So how do we do that? A good question. So the concept here is, and the answer, as I started by talking about, is you know, bring the fitness world and medical world closer together. That's the answer. So how the heck do you bring the fitness world closer to your patients? I don't know how to do that for myself. How the hell do I know how to do it for somebody else? That's a fair question. And basically, it doesn't matter if you're a runner, if you're an adult runner, whatever you are, there's this injury threshold, which is basically on the x-axis is frequency, on the y-axis is stress. There's the injury threshold, and we get that injury threshold pushed out further by getting people to basically work on strengthening their kinetic chain. So the kinetic chain is all the muscles tip to toe. So the strengthening that I talk about and have my patients do of any age is full body strengthening. It's not bicep curls. It's not bench presses. It's everything at once. So I get into what's called functional strength training, meaning you're using a bunch of muscle groups at once. So it's not go to the gym and do the leg press machine. It's do body weight plyometric jump squats at home in your movement, which you're going to do and let us know on. All right. So there's a lot to do in this domain, and kinetic chain is strength plus flexibility. I have a lot of kids. I bet the resources that I have for you just a second, but I have a lot of kids with good Schlatter and Sievers in their heel, and I get them stretching somewhat. I'm a big fan for the flexibility piece of getting on my foam roller. I think I got mom on one too, by the way. Foam roller is a kind of a home myofascial release that seems to work better than stretching for loosening up that. Who owns a foam roller in here? Oh, that's better than the Fitbit. That's good. So I'm a big fan of getting on that foam roller. This is a little kid who came in to see me with Osgood Schlatter. This is one of my residents coming through, and we got him working on loosening up those muscles around his knee, rolling out his IT band. He looks kind of happy, but it hurts, actually. He's faking it. But loosening up those muscles. He was excited about it, yeah. You know, that's like a New York City outfit, man.
If that tongue gets caught underneath the roller, it could be fatal.
That's a different issue, yeah. That's a totally different. That's why I'm standing close by with this pair of scissors. I'm ready to snip that tie. So flexibility. So I think on how to use the roller at home, which I love, and it helps. And there's this other piece that I'll kind of talk to you about. So again, kinetic chain is strength plus flexibility. And so the flexibility piece, I get them on a roller most days. The strength piece. So a couple things that I've worked on with the AAP. So this is this thing called home-based strength training for young athletes. So this is a full home strength training kit. 100% of the profits go to the AAP. I literally make $0 and 0 cents on any of these things, but I want to get this word of strength training out because I want you guys to be talking to your patients about it because I think it makes a huge difference. So this is a kit that you get all the stuff's on Amazon. So this thing is a kit that comes with a DVD and a series of 10 flashcards. And literally, you make this 10 flashcard horseshoe in the middle of the room, and you can set up a station-based strength training program. It takes about 45 minutes to an hour, depending on how much you want to do. That walks you through the right position. You really cannot hurt yourself doing body weight strength training. And I love parents and kids doing this stuff together. So I have parents. I have this woman in Portland who set up this whole kind of cul-de-sac strength training. She got T-shirts made for these kids for their soccer program. They come in. They run a whole boot camp class. There's a huge amount of kind of stuff you guys can do on this stuff of thinking about how do I get these people, because these kids are playing sports. I want them to play sports. But the nice thing about this kind of stuff is if you have an overweight kid who's at risk for whatever, they do stuff too. I really like it. So this home-based strength training kit. Then on the far side is an app on the App Store called Iron Kids, which also is an AAP app. I developed with them, and it's how to set up strength training. It's not as in-depth. There's not the flashcards, but it's good. You kind of know what you're doing. You want to do it on the go. That's all. That's kind of this next level down. This is all teaching people how to do strength training at home. Yes, sir.
I have your training program.
This one.
Yeah, I did that with my son. He loves it. He's 10 years old.
Dude, how long have you been doing it for?
Since the summer we started it.
Gotcha. And tell me how did you find out about it, and how did you start doing it, and how did he receive it at the beginning?
My wife actually saw you at
okay.
the station.
Oh, good. So you're the guy from up here in
Yep.
Oh, I know you. Yeah. New Heights, right?
So I ended up online
Yeah.
and actually found that he's a shirt.
Yeah.
He's only 10, and I'm kind of, I don't want him to overdo it.
Yeah.
So reading a lot of stuff about strength training, et cetera. So I came up with the program. And the first 3 times it was very challenging, even for me. I've run a marathon before, and it's a challenging program.
Yeah.
I was sore for probably 3 or 4 days afterwards.
Yes, man.
The first time, about 45 minutes. He couldn't make it through the first time.
Yeah.
Obviously, incrementally, he does better and better.
And you started on the beginner set? Yeah. Good. And who picks the music? How do you guys do it?
We actually, it comes with a DVD, right? So we usually just watch that. Those parts sometimes do it outside.
Oh, fun.
Depending on the weather.
Great.
The question I have with that is, what would be the sort of best frequency for that?
I think once, twice a week. Once is fine. Twice is great, but even once a week is fine. And that's great to hear. Thanks. I think there's a lot of kind of thinking about doing that. I want you guys to start thinking about that. Girls, sports. I think all kids do, but if you think about these girls coming in, they're 5 times at greater risk for tearing their ACL. Can literally change their life in a second. Why are programs not like pushing this stuff? Why are your kids in travel soccer not doing this stuff through the whole year? They should be doing it all year long, for sure. I mean, it's easy to do. There's no equipment. If you can get some dumbbells, that's great. Every kid come to practice with 5-pound dumbbells or 3-pound dumbbells. That's all you need. So I think there's a lot to kind of think about with that. All right. On T? With strength dude or something? Insanity. Yeah, I mean, it's all the same basic stuff. I mean, it's all the same basic body weight strength stuff. There's a lot. I think there's a lot of profit making on all that stuff too. So I think this is just like one time it's free, do it on your own. But yeah, I mean, I think whatever to get people to go, That's talking at the beginning about some of the fitness tracker stuff and whatever it takes to make people go, I think is great. Let's see, what time is it? So points on ACL injury. I think prevention of this injury is key. That's key. So kids are going to play sports. I want them to play sports. You want them to play sports. Preventing injuries is the key. Yes, sir, Mark. Yeah.
I mean, she was still playing volleyball as she was strained.
Yes.
And so, my question.
I'm not pulling them, but I'm screening them. And she's been that way for a long time. The risk is higher in landing that way. So I think the key is let's think about that stuff from happening. So prevention is key. Identification of at-risk athletes, develop prevention strategies is key. So with, I think I was talking about pitching injuries, but I'm happy to stop there. Time-wise and answer any pitching injuries really quickly. You tell me. What's the?
Go ahead and do it.
Rip through it? Yeah. Pitching in 5 minutes or less. So throwing injuries. A 13-year-old pitcher comes in 4 weeks of sitting shoulder, elbow pain, initially pain with throwing hard, now pain throwing softly. The key with throwing injuries, and the key with any injury, there's varieties. There's I twisted my knee is swollen. That and say, Dr. Hey, I got to go to the doctor. That's like my knee's screwed up. What do I do? And the other kind of injury is actually more common is I'm playing baseball, my elbow hurts. Talk to you. When do I go see somebody? And so for anybody in this room who may be a runner or a dancer or anybody of your patients, the key is if pain is changing mechanic of motion, get it checked out. So if this guy can't throw a baseball because his elbow hurts, or some can't, because their shoulder, if pain is changing how they move, that's the time to get it checked out.
In my opinion, is that if it hurts, you shouldn't do it.
Well, here's the comment on that. I want them to do it, but what I'm in sports medicine, what I'm more thinking about is, they just stay off it till it gets better. If it hurts, if my shins hurt, we'll stop running till your shins stop hurting. It can address the cause. So pain will go away if you stop. But if somebody's pronating too much, or their stride length is too long, or those are the two most common, when they get back to running, they're going to have the same problem. So what I think about is not only, what's the injury, but how can I prevent it from happening again so they can keep doing it. So developmental phases of throwing. So basically it starts young, kind of point, click, throw. You can watch her in stage 1 throwing, just kind of pointing and throwing. She's got pretty good aim, actually. Not using her feet at all. It's like, whatever. Just kind of the method, which kind of works also. As kids get older, they start to basically throw and step with an ipsilateral motion. So they step and throw with the right side, which to get to be a higher level thrower, you develop the contralateral. So you step with the left and throw with the right, but when you begin, you're stepping and throwing with the same side, both with the right. So if any of your sons are giving you crap for throwing inappropriately, particularly moms in here, you're stuck in your stage 3 throwing mechanism. You're basically still stepping and throwing with the same side, and that's why you're getting made fun of. So you can reverse that by doing the contralateral instead of the ipsilateral. So you can watch this guy who's kind of thinking through that, and he's like, all right. So if he's using his feet at all, and he's going to basically throw with the right, which is wrong. And then his older brother's like, dude, you got to do it the other way here. So then he's going to try and figure this out. There's a neurologic development piece of this. He's trying to kind of figure this out. And he's like, foot, right foot, left foot. Yeah, can't really totally figure it out. So he's just kind of like, whatever kind of works. By the time we get to this guy, you can see how he's kind of stepping with the left, throwing with the right. His mechanism isn't perfect. You can see he's kind of getting to the point where he's stepping with the left and throwing with the right. Different mechanic. To the more mature mechanic, we have kind of, age 10, we have kind of 2 people. So this guy on the left and on the right are doing the same thing. Now, I'll tell you is, this has open growth plates here and here, made of cartilage. This guy has a ligament right here named after Tommy John. And this guy is at relatively much higher risk of injury than this guy. And so watch both these guys throw right now and tell me what you see differently, guy on the left versus the right. Hold on. What do you see?
The 10-year-old falling up.
Okay.
The kid is moving.
The 10-year-old is throwing more up. The other guy is throwing up on us.
Closest. Anybody else?
Farther forward, is he?
Okay. So the key here, if you look at the college pitcher, his entire body, from the foot of his foot on the pitching rubber to the hand, is one consistent motion. The guy on the left, it's like all the pieces are moving, but they're kind of moving in completely random ways. Like his legs are moving one way, his arms are moving another way, his body. There's kind of no synchrony in anything he's doing. So what this is the relative loading force around his elbow and shoulder is higher. He's in all kinds of weird positions, loading kinds of force. And so the point is that he has an immature skeleton. He has this kind of pitch mechanic, which is so different than mature pitch mechanic. And all of a sudden, you know, the guy's at a much higher risk for injury. So he starts to load too much pressure on his shoulder. He can start to spread out the growth plate in his shoulder, mild, moderate, or severe, where the entire growth plate starts to split apart, little league shoulder. The pyerophysis, 15 to 19 years of age, 80% of humeral growth. What's happening is you basically start to get this progressive pain in the upper shoulder. So those kids, we don't let them throw. We get an x-ray to diagnose that in combination with a physical exam. And then we figure out why it's happening, including usually some kind of combination of throwing mechanic. Again, just arresting him will make him go away, but it won't fix the reason why he got that problem. So we want to try and figure out, you know, the reason he got that problem. Same with the elbow. This is somebody who comes in with pain in the elbow. He's got some pain. So basically the Tommy John ligament, the ulnar collateral ligament, runs right here. This is where the apophysis, he's got a little pain here. This is no big deal. That's an old injury. I'm worried about pain here. Pain in the elbow, by the way, is more serious than pain in the shoulder, just as a piece. This is a guy who I'm more worried about. So this is a guy who's starting to spread this elbow and this epicondyle or apophysis apart. He's getting some widening here and some pain, but he's pulled that piece entirely off. This is who tore the ligament in the immature patient. He ended up getting a slide made of him because that's rare to have that happen. The elbow we treat with just kind of thinking about the mechanics of what they're doing. We're much more cautious about getting them back to activity. And then finally, we do a lot on prevention. We think about strengthening muscles, warming up muscles. Count guidelines are helpful to try and start thinking about how much somebody's going to do. We're getting away somewhat from the type of pitch, more just the number of pitch. And then think about the mechanics of what somebody does is also helpful as well. And then now what we're doing at the hospital is we're using formation of kind of stuff. If you're a runner or a swimmer or a golfer or a baseball player, using kind of this mechanical analysis program where we have this kind of 3D software where you can kind of really get a sense of what the mechanic of your throw is, what the mechanic of your swim is, what the mechanic of your run is, and we can kind of figure out where are you making the problem and how can we prevent that problem going forward. So that's kind of the new frontier going forward. So in conclusion, are great for people to do of all ages. Get people off their butts on a regular basis, and I have some cards with email and questions for you. I'll hope you guys soon, and what do you got for questions? Thanks for having me. Yeah, in the back.
Health and soccer. What are your thoughts? There has been controversy.
Yeah, it's BS, basically, is the answer. Hear a little bit more about this movement to try and get people not to headball until age 14, which, to be honest, if you could get that as a rule and everybody did it, I'd be fine with it. It's never going to happen. So at this point, I think the key is getting the right size ball and good technique. Girls are more prone to head injuries than boys, concussions. And the reason is that concussion rarely happens from this. It's much more rotational or hitting the back of your head, hitting the occiput. But the rotational piece, basically, the head, the muscle is relatively less in a female than in a male, so the rotational force for that girl and the brain inside the skull is quicker. It's that rotational force which seems to kind of create that coup contra coup injury. So strength training has a lot of benefits across the entire spectrum of the body. Again, big into strength training, but the helmets don't do anything.
Those two common injuries, are there sports to avoid or encourage in the off-season?
I think as long as you're doing the strength piece across the spectrum of what you're doing, I think that's the key. So your son is going to be, is he going to make it to, the Yankees? I don't know, but he's going to be a best, able dude because of that.
About creating an off season because some of these kids don't have one anymore.
Yeah.
And I've got a couple nieces who are very intense soccer players, and I'm quite worried for them never taking a break.
Yeah. And so at the beginning, I was talking about this kind of sports specialization and the kind of trend towards that happening, and I think the answer is you're right. And the sub-answer is that may need to be built in a little bit. I think, you need some relative downtime, but you definitely, if you're doing kind of, biggest concern I have is not year-round sport. It's, sports specialization at a young age and not doing the strength training. I think those are the two things, and they're going to play soccer and that's all they're going to do, and you're not going to change that. The space is the biggest because it's when they're only playing and they're not getting bodies prepared to play that they end up with a lot of problems. And the programs do not do it. They just have them play. They do not emphasize the strength. Yes?
So somebody comes in with any of these obvious injuries and after resting, you want to mention that.
Yeah.
And since I'm not a professional sport person, who do you refer to?
So it's a good question. So I tend to start using the following people. Number one is if I'm going to send an athletic person someplace, I make sure that the person I'm going to, if it's a nutritionist, if T is like an athletic person. I think athletic people do well with athletic people, so that's number one I check for. And I use, depending, if I want them to do strength, I usually use a PT or sometimes an athletic trainer if they know about strength. I sometimes use a strength and conditioning coach. Again, my focus is I want them to get going and get stronger. And finding a good person to do that is the most important thing. Step up here for anybody. Great to see everyone. Thanks for having me up, Mark.
So do people need to take a break, or should we just move right on?
Thanks a lot.
My pleasure. Great, very interesting.
Good.
I've seen Jordan speak before. So, let me go see who we have. We have two people who wanted to present things this morning. So,
Thank you. I'll take a couple for my office.
Oh, good. Yeah, sure. I'll leave it up here.
do a question privately.
Sure.
Okay. I like distribution.
I think they're all. I just think they're all.
Yeah.
You know,